Thanks for visiting my channel. My name is Jeff McCool, and over the next several months, I'm going to do some interviews with promoters who put on grassroots gravel races here in the Midwest and maybe some across the country. Those are some events that a lot of times most people don't know about, haven't heard of, and really are some great events to go to. You get to see some great scenery, visit some great communities, and really help impact those communities in a positive way. So hopefully you'll enjoy that. If you do, please like, subscribe, and share these interviews so that others can learn more about these events also. Thank you. Today we're going to talk to Eric Sutter, who promotes the Open Range Gravel Race out in Pratt, Kansas. He's got a lot to offer out there. It's a race that a lot of you probably haven't heard of, but you've all heard about the Flint Hills, but you may not have heard of the Gypsum Hills. So looking forward to this interview today, and with that, we'll go ahead and get started with meeting Eric.
Today we've got Eric Sutter with Open Range Gravel Race with us.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and talk to people about Open Range.
Eric, why don't you tell us a little bit about where Open Range, where you have this event at and what makes it unique?
Open Range is starts in Pratt, Kansas. It's down in south central Kansas, about an hour west of Wichita. It starts in the kind of the plains area and then goes into a cool area called the Gypsum Hills, which is a unique geological area down just south of Pratt.
Tell us a little bit about the Gypsum Hills and what makes them so unique and such a great place to have this event for you.
Yeah, definitely. So what's interesting about the Gypsum Hills is not just the geological formations, which are in and of themselves pretty unique to the United States, and that is it's got a lot of iron-rich dirt, so you're going to have a lot of red dirt. There's a lot of white gypsum rock outcroppings, so kind of the contrast between the red and white, and then the green. We have it in April in the springtime, so everything's starting to green up, and so you got kind of a red, white, and green look to the landscape. The hills are I'd say more rugged than the Flint Hills. So there are going to be some buttes and mesas and canyons. And so that really makes it an interesting place. In addition to the wildlife in that area is different than anywhere else around. So you'll have road runners and turkeys and different types of deer. You'll have just all sorts of different wildlife that you'll see down there.
I know no race can go on without those volunteers, and you have quite a few down there. And I think you've got a couple that maybe not necessarily volunteers, but very from the community that really helped put on this race. And one of those was one of the local ranchers that allows you to go through your land, if I understand correctly. Tell me a little bit about that relationship and how that came about, and what
Sure.
really does that add to your race?
Oh man, it's I think it's one of the things that makes Open Range unique is the amount of private land that we get to use, and the name Open Range is really a great explanation of what riders are going through, because it is an area where unlike around maybe what they're used to in the Kansas City area or outside Wichita where everything's fenced off, down there there's no fences. It's completely open. The road goes right through the land, so you could have cattle, and oftentimes we do have cattle going across the road right in front of riders. And so yeah, when I was looking at the course, I looked at some previous races, and there was one that Bobby Smith did he's out of Winfield, and he had done one in the area. And so I talked with him a little bit to get some input, and he kind of set me up with a rancher down there named Brian Alexander. His profile on Instagram is Red Hills Rancher, and just an outstanding guy. He's just the way he respects the land and how he ranches his cattle down there. He really tries to make it as progressive and as I guess as least harmful to the environment as possible. and the way he does it. And he's able to, I think, manage over 1,000 acres down there. And he's just been a great resource to have. Allows us to do basically whatever we want on his land. In fact, there's sometimes I probably have to restrain him a little bit because he wants to make it more difficult for the riders, and I have to kind of, I think, pull him back and get him into reality and say, that's a little too much. So this last year, we in fact we created some roads that we became known as grassable. It's not gravel and it's not grass, but it was grassful. That was named by one of our riders that comes out from Western Kansas, because it was basically just his mower cutting a swath through his pasture. And it was a difficult aspect of the race, but it was something unique and something we like to kind of change some things up every once in a while. And so, but having his support, the Red Hills Rancher support, and some of the other ranchers down there is just it's a blessing to be able to do that and provide that opportunity for riders.
That is always unique to get to go out there on some of that private land that you don't normally get to be on. See the scenery, really enjoy that. Hopefully the riders get to lift their heads long enough to enjoy it. I know sometimes that's a challenge.
That's a good point. And I try to always remind riders that, hey, look up and see where you're at. Not just for a safety reason, but it's just the views down there are like nowhere else. They change every mile or so. You're seeing something different. So it's especially for those tip of the speed riders, getting the opportunity to look up and see and take in the scenery is really a unique opportunity.
The Red Hills Rancher gives you the riders some challenge. Tell us a little bit about some of the other courses. I've heard about maybe the terrain down there with a little bit of sand that you guys have. So tell me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, so it is sandy. It does can get loose in places. It's interesting because it's really based on the amount of moisture we get prior to the race. If it's dry, then it can get a lot looser. If we get some moisture the week of the race, it actually kind of firms up that road and actually get some very fast times. Our first year we had some rain, I think on a Tuesday prior to the race, and I want to say the top riders averaged a little over 18 miles an hour average pace for 126 miles. So it's not undoable. It adds a unique challenge. If you're used to road riding or riding on hero gravel, your times might be affected a little bit, but like I said, it's a unique challenge. It keeps you on your toes at times because it can go from hard packed to loose. But generally overall, it's still a great course.
So is most of the course out on private land? Is it on county roads? What's kind of the mix there of your race?
Yeah, so we try to use all different types of road surfaces. So overall, it ends up being about 70% gravel, if you will, and about 30% paved roads. We try to get you that pavement to kind of break up some of the sandier spots if we can. And then it varies on how we route through some of the private land on how much of that we get to use. I think in the past we've had over 10% of the whole course has been on private land. So roughly 12 to 15 miles or so is actually through private ranch roads.
Now, you already talked about the 200K that you guys do. You also do 100K, is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, I call it the 100K plus because we had some people, I don't say complain, but when I try to do the math, it ends up being about 68 to 70 miles, which 63 miles is roughly 100K. So we give you some extra kilometers for free without charging you.
That's always nice. It's nice that you add a little bit extra there for them, give a little bonus miles there.
Right.
For sure. You guys also have a 200K touring. Was last year your first year for that?
It was. Yeah, it wasn't. I think it went off great. We had about 17 riders last year sign up for the 200K tour. Is really a great opportunity to see the landscape down there without having to worry about a time. It breaks up the 200K route into 2 days. The first day is about 80 miles, and it takes riders from Pratt down to the Gyp Hills Guest Ranch, which has been a great supporter of the race. And then the second day on Saturday morning is kind of an easier 40-mile route back to Pratt, 45-mile route back to Pratt. The riders that did it this year had just an amazing time, in that we'll do it again for 2021. We actually will take your bags down to the Gyp Hills Guest Ranch. So I wanted to create something that allowed for anyone to ride the 200K if they felt 200K was too much, but they felt like they could do it at their own pace. I wanted them to be able to do that, even if they didn't have the bike packing bags to make that trip. I didn't want that to exclude them from the opportunity. So, if people want to take their bike packing bags and test out equipment, it's a great opportunity to do that. If they want us to take their stuff to the halfway point, or not really halfway point, but to the Gyp Hills Guest Ranch, we're glad to do that. And so it's a neat opportunity for those that want to either get into bike packing or just experience it at a slower pace.
Now, you guys do also do something unique there, I think, at the ranch. Can you kind of talk to us a little bit about what that overnight looks like there at the ranch and what's included in that entry?
Yeah. So that's a good point. So the ranch is that experience, that tour route is kind of like an all-inclusive kind of situation. So you'll get a dinner provided for you. Andrea at the Gyp Hills Guest Ranch will fix a great hearty dinner, and then she'll make a breakfast in the morning. So your dinner and breakfast is included in the fee for the tour option, and has some of the best sunsets. If you've seen pictures from last year on our Facebook page, just an amazing sunset that they got to experience last year.
What are you looking for in 2021? Anything that you're looking to change up or to add to the event for 2021?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll see. I think it'll look a lot like 2020. Hopefully COVID is tamed down by then and we can go back to our normal starts and whatnot. Some of the section on Red Hills Rancher area on the Alexander Ranch last year was probably a little bit rougher than what we were hoping for. So we'll probably try to tame that down a little bit. It's you'll probably find a lot of if you've been down there before, you'll find a lot of the same familiar stuff that you've seen in the past. It's just it's a good, neat area to experience a different part of the state.
There's some other things that you do uniquely too with your race is you give all the profits back to the local community, and I know you really rely on that local community for your volunteers at your different SAG support stops. So do you mind talking a little bit about who helps out and
Sure.
then what you've been able to give back to the community?
Yeah. So when I looked at creating this race, I knew the potential was going to be there to need some volunteers. And that was kind of the aspect that I really didn't want to, I didn't want 10 or 15, 20 volunteers coming to me during a race. And so I wanted to team up with an organization that I felt was worthwhile and could kind of help with that volunteer effort. So I reached out to the Pratt Public School Foundation, and the person that responded back, she actually graduated a year or two after I did from high school. And so we kind of made that connection, and she was more than happy to take it on, to present it to the Pratt Public School Foundation board. And then they agreed to help with the volunteer effort for that in Pratt. And so we donate our proceeds to that organization. There's also the Father's House of Worship that's in Sun City, Kansas. They also provide volunteers and kind of run that checkpoint there, and that's at about a 35-mile point in the race. and they do an amazing job there with water and nutritional products. And then in Medicine Lodge, there's another organization there that it's the rec center there that helps out with volunteers as well. So we've donated to them over the years as well. So to date, we've donated over $15,000 in 3 years of racing, which I think is a good start. And it's neat to be able to provide those organizations some monetary benefit for helping with our volunteer effort.
Fantastic. What's been the response from the local community? I know you've got them involved, you've been giving back to them, but what's the overall sentiment of the community about the event?
Yeah, they love it. It's funny because, of course, the first year we put it on, no one had heard about it, and people asked, well, can you ride on the roads out there? And so, but every time I go back and I prepare before the race, I talk to people and they're like, oh yeah, we saw that last year, we know about that, and so it's been great. And that's what I love about that area, is that they're just so warm and welcoming. They love to see the riders down there. They love to see that they're having a great time. So yeah, it's just been positive feedback from the community.
How big is Pratt?
Yeah, so Pratt's I think roughly about 6,500 to 7,000. So but it's an isolated town. I mean, there's no the next biggest town from it is probably Hutchinson, Kansas, and then Wichita and Dodge City would be the next, kind of the next closest big town. So it's a smaller community, but it just gives, it's a good size. It's a good place to raise a family, and it's a good place to, of course, have a nice little bike race.
Sounds like it. So, we go there. We've always got our family with us. Are there other things going on during this time for our families to do as we're out there going across the open range?
Yeah. So, there's where the start finish line is for the last couple of years. It's about 100-acre park. So there's plenty of opportunities for walking trails, both paved route and then one through a wooded section. There's a live band, as long as we're not in the kind of the COVID era, that plays. I just spoke to one of the bands today, and so hopefully we were able to do that. We weren't this year just due to COVID, and so we'll see what this what 2021 brings. There's shopping. Pratt has a great downtown main street with local shops, and so then there's some museums as well. There's an art museum located downtown, and then the headquarters for this Wildlife and Parks is in Pratt, and so they have a museum as well on the outside of town. But yeah, it's a great area and a great community.
Now, did you grow up down in that part of Kansas then?
I did. Yeah, I went to high school. We moved when I was in 8th grade, so I did 8th grade in high school in Pratt, and so it's really where I felt like I grew up. I still consider it my hometown. When people ask me where I'm from, I always say I'm from Pratt because it's just it kind of means that much to me. It helped create who I am, I guess you could say, and so I still consider that my hometown. And so it was, as creating the race, I wanted to create something to one, give back to an organization, and two, to show people the area down there and how special it was.
So what got you into deciding to promote this gravel race? We all know that it's not, bunch of money you're not making off of it. No. It's more for the love of it usually. So what got you into it yourself? Yeah,
so it's kind of it's an interesting aspect. So, or an interesting story, I guess, because if you had talked to me 3 years ago and said, "Hey, you're gonna run a gravel race," I wouldn't have believed you. So I got my start in endurance racing in the kayak and canoeing side of things, and I did that for several years. I liked it, and I really wanted to do to set up a race, an actual like a kayak race down in Wichita. And one thing led to another, and that never panned out. I'm I was in the National Guard a couple years ago, and I was deployed overseas to a sandy environment, and which maybe made me realize why you can bike on sand. Um, but while I was there, just this idea hit me to first start just do a route for myself, to go down to the Gyp Hills, stop in Sun City, and ride back to Pratt. And as I got to looking at it, I thought, man, this would be a great time to show this area to other people. And so I kind of just said, what if I made this into a route? What if I made this into a race? What would that involve? And so part of my job at the time was doing plans for military operations. And so I kind of just used the same framework we use in the military, and developed a plan from A to Z, and kind of used that plan, made a presentation that I presented to community members in Pratt and Barber County to get their feedback, and it just kind of took off from there. So it was interesting that the little known fact is the first gravel race, or really bike race, that I'd been to was the one that I put on in 2018, and I'd arrived back from overseas about 6 weeks prior to that start date. So it was just kind of a calling, if you will. Just kept having this idea in my head that I couldn't get it to go away. So that's kind of what led to the start of it.
Having 2020, the lovely year that it is, and going ahead and having your race in June, what were some of those obstacles you had, and what did you do to overcome those, especially with making sure it was a safe event for everyone?
Right. Well, one was the social distancing. And so to start, we allowed for people to get refunds if they needed a refund, if they couldn't make it because they didn't feel safe. We allowed that. Normally, as a race promoter, it's very difficult to allow for refunds because of all the planning and supplies that have to go and be purchased ahead of the race. So that's something we did, and that'll probably just be kind of a one-time thing for that. And then, excuse me. Then we took everyone's temperature at check-in. So we had a thermometer. And as people checked in, we were taking temperatures to make sure no one had a fever. We also, had masks for our volunteers, masks and gloves. And so at the checkpoints throughout the race, the volunteers would take the water bottles from the riders and fill them up themselves, to where the riders didn't have to touch the water coolers. And so we tried to keep that safe as well. We also kind of used a rolling start. So we had a mass start for those that felt like that they were competitive and would be in the top 10. And then for everyone else, we did a rolling start. So those were some of the key points on trying to keep people safe throughout the race. And then moving from April to June, the temperature in that part of the state can get rather hot. So normally we're dealing with temperatures maybe starting out in the 50s, going to maybe the low 80s for April, and moving it to middle of June, we were touching on 100 degrees, and so because of that, the amount of water intake that the riders were going through became more of an issue, and so to deal with that, we put in a couple more water points on the back side of the 200K course, just to give them a little more ability to refresh with some water and cool down.
I know you work through a few different communities down there, and is it just in a couple counties, if I remember right, in Kansas? Yes. So how was it working with those communities and the county officials during all of this to be able to get your event to be able to put on your event for this year?
Yeah, so they were super supportive, and I've included them from the very beginning back in late 2017. When I started planning the first year's race, I reached out to the community officials in both Pratt County and Barber County, and I wanted them to be involved in this and to have kind of some input and whatnot. And so I've been very upfront with them from the beginning, and for this process and the year of COVID, I told them what our plan was to kind of mitigate some of the dangers, I guess, if you will. And they were super supportive of that, and just backed us all the way. So we had no issue with any of the county officials throughout that process.
Like any of our events, we couldn't put them on without our sponsors. So do you mind sharing about who a few of your sponsors are and any other shout outs you want to give?
Yeah, definitely. So and that's right. It's difficult to to create a race that you're donating to charity, and then so to have sponsors really helps that tremendously. And so there's several sponsors that we make it almost impossible to do this without. First, Trek Bicycles has been great throughout this process, from giving away a bike to giving away some nice carbon wheel sets. They've just been a great partner throughout this process. In addition, the Pratt Area Chamber of Commerce, they were somebody I work with real close, and they do a great job, help us out. The People's Bank, which is a local bank there in Pratt, but they have other branches throughout the state of Kansas, mostly in rural areas. They've been tremendous help. Legends Pub and Grill was a huge help from the start. Then we have some other more regional and national brands that like Chamois Butter that have helped out. Hammer Nutrition, Orange Mud, Saris, and again going back to the church there in Sun City, Father's House of Worship, the Alexander Ranch, the Gyp Hills Guest Ranch. And of course, this year, last year we had 3 Feet Cycling to help us out with a trailer and some other equipment as well. So, yeah, there's definitely it's a team effort, and that's why when I speak about the race, I try not to use the word I, because I don't do much of it. I just help kind of get everything together. It's a process that there's many different people involved. So I look at the race as a we. And not an I thing.
Yeah, definitely. You've got some great volunteers, some great partners to put on your race. Tell us a little bit about when registration opens, where we can get registered, and where people can find out more information about your event.
Definitely. So registration opens December 12th, which is a Saturday at 8 a.m. Central Time. You can go to bikereg.com/openrange. You can also check out our website, and it's www.openrangegravel.com, and it'll give you links as well to that registration page, as well as show you results from past years and kind of give you some more information, some pictures and whatnot of the race. We're on Facebook, again, Open Range Gravel, and Instagram with the same handle there as well.
As we wrap up, anything else you want to share with viewers about the event, about anything else that you have going on?
Yeah, well, again, I just want to thank them for all the support we've received. I want to thank 3 Feet Cycling. Thank you, Jeff, and your group that has helped us out with some supplies. Was a tremendous asset this year to use that. I want to tell people, if they can, just support the local, some of the smaller grassroots gravel races. There's so many in Kansas and some surrounding states that are worthwhile. You don't have to spend a lot of money. They're usually, registration fees are real reasonable, and they usually do it to support a good cause. And so, I've thoroughly enjoyed going out this year and in the past several years to a lot of the different small races, and just have a blast seeing a different area. So that'd be the biggest thing I'd say is support those smaller grassroots gravel races when you can, and see a cool area.
Well, come down to South Central Kansas, see the Gypsum Hills, a little bit something different. Kansas has a lot to offer. We're not just flat, so come on out, check out the Open Range, say hi to Eric, and thanks again, Eric, for joining us today, and we really appreciate learning more about the Open Range and hope to see another great year.
Great. Thanks a lot, Jeff.